Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon. Devyanshi,
Yes, sir.
please sit. So, you have done economics
Yes, sir.
from LSR and later on from
JNU.
JNU.
Yes.
Okay. So, are we in a Goldilocks position in our economy now?
Yes, sir. It would be fair to say that. We have a high growth rate at the moment, about 8% for the last quarter, combined with a low inflation rate in the range of 2%. That definitely places us in a Goldilocks zone with respect to giving a stimulus, a fiscal as well as a monetary stimulus to the economy. But I would still say that there are certain concerns. First of all, that core inflation has been consistently low for about 2 years now. So there are concerns that there is a deflationary gap that may be emerging, and there is overcapacity, primarily on account of low private investment. It is very important to inquire into the causes.
Overcapacity is not because of private investment.
Yes.
In fact, private investment is lacking because there is overcapacity.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Correct. So that is a certain concern, and it seems that RBI's latest push to cut rates is definitely in the right direction given these concerns, as well as being in a comfortable position to give that stimulus.
So this stimulus, is it going to be really any decisive thing? I mean,
So the
25 basis points is nothing.
So if we look at the cumulative rate cut for the year, it is about 125 basis points,
Right.
which is a significant rate cut for the whole year. Secondly, that it takes generally takes about 3 quarters for a rate cut to translate into the lending rates in the economy. So only time will tell how effective this stimulus is.
What can be done for improved transmission of these rate cuts?
So certain steps have already been taken.
Like?
So externally benchmarked loans, which directly link lending rates and EMIs to certain declared benchmarks, which reduces a little bit of banks' discretion with respect to fixing lending rates and increases transmission.
Yeah, but that will only change the rate for the existing loans, or also for the new loans.
So it would be for both, depending on how banks transmit the rate cuts. But there is expectation that with increased liquidity, there will be greater competition in the market for cutting rates.
What has been done to increase the liquidity?
So RBI also has plans for doing certain open market operations to inject greater liquidity in the markets.
About a year back, when the rupee was falling and there was an effort to kind of soften the volatility in rupee,
Yes, sir.
and we intervened in the forex market.
Yes, sir.
The RBI intervened in a big way.
Yes.
So there was a view that we have lost a lot of our foreign reserve was used up in that.
Yes.
So do you agree with that or not? And then there was also some need to inject liquidity in the market, and because the liquidity had dried up. So what did we do to inject liquidity at that time?
So typically, if you look at last year, there was a concern that given increasing inflation on the global front, there could be increasing transmission of commodity price pressures into the economy, which is why the RBI felt it was prudent at that point to manage the currency, which also resulted in the IMF classifying the currency as stabilized, as a stabilized currency. But if we look at the situation currently, commodity prices are fairly low and they are comfortable, which gives RBI certain
So that's a fair point. My question is that did it lead to depletion of our foreign exchange reserve at that point of time?
So while I'm not aware of the exact numbers, but there is some truth to that statement, that there was a bit of depletion of reserves at that point, which definitely in turn impacts liquidity, because in order to inject reserves, the RBI has to withdraw liquidity from the market. For that, it has various methods, which include sterilization operations.
So how did they at that time? How did they actually improve the liquidity? That was the third part of the question.
Right. Sir, I'm not sure. I think I'll have to go and read up about it a bit.
Supposing they purchase the buyback or repurchase the bonds or bills, treasury bills, which are in the market, what will happen?
So that would essentially result in a sterilization operation, because when they buy back the securities, they in turn inject liquidity, rupee liquidity back into the markets.
So that is what will
Yes.
inject the liquidity, isn't
Yes.
it? Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay. You have studied in LSC, you have studied in JNU, you have studied in the elite schools. But I was actually going through your DAV and I just wanted to ask you, you can decline to answer if you don't want to. You lost your parents, both of them?
Yes, sir.
Like, was it early or like something?
So my mother passed when I was 6, and my father passed when I was about 12.
Okay.
And it was, of course, a difficult journey.
So who raised you? Like
My grandparents.
your grandparents. And it is remarkable that you have had shown such a resilience, which
Thank you, sir.
I must admire that.
Thank you, sir.
Having said that, now just tell me, our RBI,
Yes, sir.
is it truly autonomous of the government or not?
So if we look at RBI's trajectory in the pre-1990 period, we see that there was a coordination between monetary and fiscal policy, and there was increasing pressure on the RBI in that period to essentially, convert the debt into rupee and finance that deficit on the government's part. But if we look at the period now, we see that particularly after the inflation targeting regime, there has been greater independence on the RBI's part, because now they have been assigned a specific mandate to target inflation.
My question was basically, RBI is supposed to be actually playing a little watchdog role over the government also, in a sense, in certain respect. Having the RBI the function the way we are, isn't it actually bidding the government of the day's policies, which may not necessarily be financially or fiscally prudent, but motivated by maybe electoral or other considerations?
So I would say that there are two aspects here. One aspect is that in the kind of global uncertainty that we live in, some degree of fiscal and monetary policy coordination is desirable. The second part is that I think the real problem is the size of the public banking sector. Because we have such a large public banking sector even now, it often restricts RBI's role with respect to acting as a watchdog over those banks.
So even more important then, shouldn't RBI not be manned by, let's say, from officers from the civil services? Should it not be a reputed economist or person who is outside of the government? Because people who worked with the government and then go to RBI, do you think they can be actually independent, or the government has the tools to influence them, or at least they are thinking? They are in-house people, they will think just the way the government wants them to think. Is it not advisable, like in US?
Yes, yes, sir.
The Fed is relatively independent of the pressures of the government.
Yes, sir.
Will it not be better for the country in the long run? What do you think?
So when we consider the appointments procedure for the RBI executives, it is certainly true that the government has its own process for appointing those individuals, and then they take a call as what they deem fit. But if we look in terms of their mandate and their functioning, I believe that they are endowed with sufficient independence within that institution to function with respect to RBI as an autonomous body. But
So
I do
you
believe
don't
that
see
that's a
it, you don't
concern.
see it as a problem or a issue of area of concern.
Sir, it can be an area of concern at times, and it is definitely a proposal worth considering if we should just like for other regulators, we should have a completely independent process for appointing RBI chiefs.
Okay. Moving on, it is said that sometimes democracy is an impediment for development. And democracy is of course important, but it can succeed development rather than precede development. The example may be China, South Korea even, and India is on the other side. So what do you think about it?
Yes, sir, there has been quite a concern that, for example, in China and Korea, particularly in Korea, I wouldn't say that's the case for China, but that they first
China
had
is
a...
still
Yes,
not
they
a
are not a
democracy at all.
democracy. They are not a democracy at all. That in Korea first there was a developmental path to create, a
Yeah, I know
capitalist
that.
society.
You got the
but
issue. I want to hear your opinion. I don't want to hear the history.
Yes. Sir, I believe that if we do not allow democracy to flourish, sometimes that developmental path can also proceed without checks and balances, which can
I'm
often...
not saying we do not allow the democracy. I'm just saying it can come at a later stage, maybe. Once we have achieved some kind of economic growth and some kind of basic facilities for the... Is there merit in the argument, or would you say no, flat?
So there may be some merit in the argument, because when we allow development to precede democracy, it results in greater human development and citizen education, which can in turn result in a more informed democracy.
Better quality of
better
democracy.
quality of democracy. At the same time, sir, that given the kind of linguistic, cultural diversity that India has, if we permit any kind of developmental path to then precede democracy, we could end up in a developmental path which is very exclusionary to the interests of various backward
So you
sections.
mean to say it can actually threaten the integrity of the country itself?
Sir, it can, and it can also lead to a developmental path which may seem desirable today but not tomorrow.
Okay, so we should proceed with caution on that hypothesis.
Yes, sir.
Last question to you. Sudan situation.
Yes, sir.
Are you aware of it? What is happening in Sudan?
Sir, I have some idea that a paramilitary force has taken
So my
over
question is a little
Darfur.
different. My question is, when Israel was bombing Gaza and civilians were dying, there were a lot of protests world over, a lot of people were worked up. In Sudan, the same thing is happening, more or less.
Yes, sir.
Why we don't see that much of hallagula about it, especially in the college campuses and other places?
Yes, sir.
For example, is JNU worked out about it? You have studied there.
So I'm not aware if there has been
Okay.
any movement on that front in GNU.
Why do you think that is?
Sir, I also think that it is true that the African continent has for a long time been ignored in mainstream media, perhaps because of its remoteness, or at least perceived remoteness in our views, and perhaps in that way, to some extent, it dictates how our news and media agenda is shaped. At the same time, it is certainly important for the world to also be cognizant and not be selective about its outrage, and to give
So
equal...
you do think there is outrage is selective in certain cases?
Yes,
And
sir.
That way
It
the
can
media
be.
is not as unbiased as one can assume, or should it be?
Yes, sir. I do
Okay.
feel that.
Thank you.
Well, Devyanshi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
How are you?
I'm good, sir.
How was your experience in Delhi, LSR? 3 years.
Sir, I think it was a good experience. I felt that I got out of my shell by being exposed to a very multicultural environment with students
Three
coming
positives and 3 not so positive of your
Yes, sir.
experience in Delhi?
So the positives for me would be that it was a very multicultural environment. I got to interact with students from across the country. There's also a sense of historicity to Delhi, which I think Chandigarh doesn't exactly provide. And thirdly, I was wowed by the public transit in Delhi, which I did not find in Chandigarh. As far as the negatives go, I think that we do have a quality of life crisis in the capital with respect to air quality, water quality.
It's better in Chandigarh? AQI is an issue in Chandigarh or not?
So it is becoming an issue now particularly because of vehicular pollution, we also do experience an elevated AQI. For example, I think it's generally in the range of 150 to 160 right now, which is clearly beyond the safe thresholds. But because we mostly have light industries around the city, it doesn't reach the levels that Delhi witnesses.
And?
And sir, with respect to other problems, I think there's a quality of life problem. Second, disaster management. We have seen that in the last 2-3 years, and even before that, flooding has become a recurring problem in the capital.
There was an incident in LSR 3 years ago where a girl, she wanted to appear for civil services and she could not pay her fee in time or something, and she took the extreme step. Were you there in college that time, or you had passed out by then?
No, sir, I had passed out.
Okay, coming to economics, what is COBRA effect?
So I am not aware
read about it.
but
It's very interesting. Not
okay.
read about it?
No, sir, but
you should
I'll
read about it. It's
definitely
quite fascinating because
okay.
you can see it in day-to-day example. Recently, there was a discussion that the present system of governance of Chandigarh should be changed.
Okay. Yes, sir.
I'm sure you're aware of that.
Yes, sir.
What is the present system of governance? What was proposed? What are the positives? What are the advantages of change? Was it going to make the Chandigarh administration better? If yes, why?
All right. So if you look at the present structure, since 1984, the governor of Punjab has been the administrator of the UT of Chandigarh, along with the regular administration. The proposed change that was under consideration was to essentially transition Chandigarh into a model of a UT with its own separate administrator instead of being affiliated with Punjab. Sir, in terms of the benefits of such a model, that it would streamline the governance. For example, right now there is often a bit of confusion with regard to the administrative structure of the city. There is an advisor to the city, the chief secretary, as well as the advisor, as well as the municipal commissioner. And because it's only one district. So
you also have that the DC should be from Haryana and I think SP should be from Punjab, something like this.
Yes,
that
sir.
Kind of arrangement.
Yes, sir.
So if it is governed like any other UT, then the officers from the UT cadre would come, isn't it?
Yes, sir. So that would lead to some clarity and streamlining in the operations.
So you are in favor of the change that were being discussed?
No, sir. I'm just coming to the drawback.
Okay.
So the drawback is that if we look at the history of Chandigarh, it was initially planned as a capital for Punjab, since Punjab lost its capital with the partition, and the land that was allotted to Chandigarh was also initially part of Punjab. That agreement in itself is important to be honored, because at this moment, if we look at Punjab, they do not have any other city that can classify, that can be developed as a capital city. And
Punjab has, Haryana has Panchkula,
yes.
Punjab has Mohali.
So, but most of the administration is currently housed in the capital complex at Chandigarh. If we look at Mohali, it's primarily developed as an adjunct city to Chandigarh, and not as a separate administrative capital in itself.
Okay, we leave it at that. My last question to you: will marriage become irrelevant in future? You are from the present generation. Will marriage become irrelevant in future?
No, sir, I don't think that marriage will become irrelevant, but the meaning of what is marriage and the contours of it may shift and change for individuals over time. Particularly if we look at marriages in India in the previous generation, we see that there is a power asymmetry between the spouses. I think that is something that may undergo a shift and a change with greater parity between spouses now.
When you have the option of living in a relationship, why did you go for marriage? My last question, sorry.
So I think marriage confers various legal benefits on an individual with respect to greater social acceptance, co-ownership of property, legitimacy of children, and all those benefits will continue to outweigh any problems that marriages face. And most importantly, marriages themselves are undergoing an evolution and a change to correct those defects.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Devyanshi.
Yes.
Women Development Cell, you have been coordinator.
Yes.
Right? Let's say tomorrow you're posted as a DC of a very backward district. How would you ensure women development in that district? Other than awareness, other than counseling, tell me 3 practical things. Take few time, take a few seconds, think over it and give me a practical solution to this issue.
Okay. Ma'am, I think first of all it's very important to understand what are the specific challenges the women in that district face.
Any backward district is generally having the same set of challenges. The women are illiterate, they are unskilled, they are not having any unemployed.
Right. Ma'am, I think the first would be a literacy campaign, because I think that literacy is a first step to making the individual independent. So that would be the first step. The second step would be financial independence. So providing women with their own bank accounts as well as employment opportunities would be a very practical
So
step.
how are you going to make sure that in a backward district you are just a DC?
Ma'am, there can be various employment initiatives and avenues that can be explored. For example, if it is a rural district, then we can also explore avenues of farm ownership, which can be transferred in women's name, greater collectivization to sell their produce in groups. I in fact came across an example of this in Madhya Pradesh, that NGO was working to train women to grow mushrooms, and then they essentially provided them with the means to sell them in better markets. They provided them with better quality of spores for the mushroom and reaching more premium markets, which was giving them a lot of financial independence.
Okay. What is your opinion about this tobacco taxation? The bill was introduced this year parliament session, and the opposition was really opposing it.
Ma'am, I'm not clear on the specifics of the bill.
Okay.
So
So a cess has been, there's a proposal to impose cess on the tobacco products.
Right.
Because it is,
right, yes, because,
and
because the GST
that would be
compensation
used,
cess is
yes,
lapsing.
and that would be utilized for health and
national security.
yeah. So what is your opinion?
Ma'am, tobacco is a sin good. So of course it comes in the category of goods that can be then.
Are you aware how many people in India are consuming tobacco?
No, ma'am, I'm not aware
Any
of the
ballpark
numbers.
figure?
Ma'am, I'm going to assume above 30% because
41%.
41%. Okay.
So considering these kind, and mostly are from the lower, let's say many of them are from lower strata.
Yes.
So whatever is a habit, it's going to continue. So irrespective of whether it's a demerit good or sin good,
Yes.
so what to do about it?
Ma'am, I think the first step is to target younger children, because I have often seen that when it comes to chewing tobacco, that habit transfers to them at an early age and then they're not able to stop. I've seen that even kids as young as 14 years, 15 years of age start chewing tobacco. So I think the first step...
my question to you is not regarding what needs to be done. My question to you is,
Okay.
what is your opinion about this bill, this cess being introduced? 41% of the population is habitual of eating tobacco. So how it is going to affect this percentage, which is also a lot amount of are from the lower rungs of society?
Ma'am, of course that it imposes a certain tax burden on that population, but at the same time we need to tax these goods in order to disincentivize their consumption to whatever extent is possible. It simply doesn't make sense to permit to not tax these commodities, and because otherwise it will
So why not
spur their
completely
consumption.
ban them altogether?
Ma'am, tobacco production itself is a major industry in India. It is also very important for various.
Are you aware what are the top 2 tobacco production states?
No, ma'am, I'm not exactly aware, but I do know that the leaves that are used for rolling the tobacco, I think Odisha dominates in that.
Okay. My last question to you, Devyanshi. Indo-Russia, the recent visit by President Putin. So, what do you think? Was it a good visit for us?
Yes, ma'am, it was a very productive visit.
Was it? What agreements were signed?
Yes, ma'am. With respect, if we look at the context of the visit, there was a certain concern that oil sanctions had been imposed on India, and there was also a large deficit in the current account that we have with Russia, because it was essentially that of a buyer-seller relationship. If we look at the current problem beyond the sanctions, there was a clear long-term imperative to diversify that trade into other products, to transform that relationship from that of a buyer-seller to that of to a certain depth of trade, so that strategic partners, so that India is also able to export goods. This would also then allow us to cover up some of the gap in our exports that we have because of the US tariffs.
So did we achieve this?
Ma'am, a roadmap has been signed for scaling up exports, and certain categories of products have been also identified.
So,
Okay, when is your interview?
So it's 18th.
18th. Okay, so please wait for a minute. We'll have a brief consultation, then give you the feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.